Well, programs that boost participation in local government, just like the one you saw, may help address some of the negative effects of what social scientists call economic segregation. That's the degree to which neighborhoods are made up of people of the same economic level, and it's the subject of a new study by the Martin Prosperity Institute at the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management. The study ranked the economic segregation of 350 U.S. metropolitan areas based on income, education, and occupation. Now, look at this map. The areas shaded in deep purple are the most economically segregated, while the areas in light blue are the least segregated. Notice how much purple you see in Texas. In fact, 3 of the country's 4 most economically segregated large metro areas are in Texas. Austin Round Rock is the highest, followed by Columbus and San Antonio. Among the least segregated large metro areas are Orlando, Kissimmee, Florida, and the Portland, Vancouver, Beaverton area in the Northwest. One of the study's authors is Richard Florida. He's the director of the Martin Prosperity Institute and a leading authority on cities and urban issues. Among his conclusions is that economic segregation threatens to undermine the role that cities have played as incubators of innovation and creativity and economic progress. I asked him to back that up.
Well, one of the things that's really cutting across this research, whether it's Austin or Dallas, Columbus, Ohio, New York or Los Angeles or Houston, those are metros. One does energy, one does knowledge, one does technology, one's a mega city. But they all have these high levels of economic segregation. Rich living with rich, highly educated with highly educated, poor living with poor, and so on. The problem is that we talk about inequality. Your show talks a lot about inequality. I think this inequality, which is literally baked into where we live, is even worse. Because the advantages that would accrue to a rich child and the ability to go to better schools and have better access to libraries and better access to all sorts of books, the disadvantages that would accrue to a poor child growing up in a disadvantaged neighborhood, it magnifies and expands that inequality.
You say it's baked in. You quote in your report a book called The Big Sort, Bill Bishop, who's done great work on this, who says that, you know, it's conventional wisdom that the reason we sort ourselves like this is because of gerrymandering and campaign finance, but in fact we self-segregate.
And I think this, I mentioned we've gone from the big sort. And I talked to Bill this morning. It's really gone to the even bigger sort. What we're seeing is a segregation of economic. This isn't racial segregation.
Right. And it's clear to point that out.
Is going on as well. I'm going to be writing about that later this week. But this economic segregation of affluent to affluent, highly educated to educated, knowledge worker to knowledge worker, and then vice versa, poor with poor, less educated with less educated. That's worsening in our society. And I think that's. It's not simply the inequality, it's that geographic segmenting. You know, Bill de Blasio, the fact that groups are occupying, as I say, not only different neighborhoods, but different worlds. I think that's the biggest problem that America faces. And what's so interesting, that cuts across city and suburb, that cuts across north and south, that cuts across tech city and energy city, knowledge city and manufacturing city, and they all seem to have this.
But I would imagine that the least among us, the least educated, the lowest income, don't have the same choices to do that. So the only people who could change this are the rich. Why would they? Why would anybody who self-selects to work with, to live with other rich in a rich neighborhood, in a suburb, let's say, or in a city amongst their, you know, workers of the same sort, why would they actively choose not to?
Well, 2 things. One, that's actually what we find. This is being driven by the selection of the affluent and the advantage. Why? You have kids, nieces and nephews, going to school. You can raise them in a completely homogeneous, lily-white, pristine pastoral suburb. But maybe they will not have the tools, they will not have the ethnic diversity, the racial diversity, the socioeconomic diversity to go out and make it in a real world. So what I think the way around this is that diversity not only adds to the we've talked about that before, diverse cities, mixed cities are not only more powerful, but exposing particularly young kids. You know, people think the best schools are in the privileged suburbs, but it's that cultural learning, it's that ability to learn other languages, to be around different kinds of people that make for a person who can really achieve in a multicultural world.
If that lab, that microcosm, that city where rich and poor have to be on the subway together, if that deteriorates, if that starts to become segregated in your words, than our lab is.
And one of the reasons I'm not as terrified of affluent people moving back to the city is because I think it forces the mayors to deal with the problems of the city. If it was just the affluent in the suburbs and the poor in the cities, the rich people would never care. Right.
Yeah.
But if there's a tension about inequality and segregation and difference and diversity and housing affordability in the cities, our mayors and city councils and leaderships are going to have to deal with it. I think you see it. I think you see it with Bill de Blasio dealing with affordable housing. I think you see it with Eric Garcetti in Los Angeles saying we've got to raise the minimum wage. So I think this mixing of people in the urban center, I know it's painful. I know housing prices are increasing. Nobody wants to be displaced. But in the long run, I think it's much better than a society that's segregated between city and suburb.
That is Richard, Florida, and that is our show for today. I'm Ali Velshi. Thank you for joining us.